love. That's how Mary Oliver imagines the Big Bang, that mystery spark, that nanosecond or less before everything else, that ignition so distant and so beyond that we can only try to imagine it. It began in love. How else, why else, what else? So I imagine, Mary Oliver writes, such love of the world, its fervency, its shining, its innocence and hunger to give of itself. I imagine this is how it began. It must have exploded with love. A love so passionate, it was impossible for God to contain it. Boom! Mary Oliver's poetic vision or image or imagination, even theological imagination, about the Big Bang conceived in love is not, really so different than the less poetic but still imaginative speculation of science. 13.8 billion years ago, one scientist has written, our entire observable universe was the size of a peach and had a temperature of 1 trillion degrees. Maybe so. It is, as Paul Sutter from Live Science wrote. But both notions, the spontaneous explosion of the peach or the fervency of God's hungry love, both are wonderfully imaginative. The mystery spark is all we know, all we can imagine, whether wrapped in poetry or theology or astrophysics. Now, in my darker moments, perhaps in yours, I don't know, I've wondered if the cosmos was the result of an indiscreet moment of passion by the God of all that is. Was it a pregnancy and a birth ignited in an indescribable, otherworldly climax resulting in an unwanted, unruly, bipolar creation? Is that how we got to be what we are and how we are? But then, a red-winged blackbird trills its unmistakable song from a nearby adolescent poplar with its arms raised in praise and covered with small green buds. But then one of last year's Easter morning hyacinths we took home and planted in the yard pokes its beautiful blue petal-covered head up through our really rocky, bad soil. But then, just when I think this cosmos and certainly the human encrusted earth is a mistake, a love child not truly loved, then someone I know reaches out and touches somebody else, somebody they don't love really, but still they are willing to act with love to serve or to help or to heal them. Because there's so much evidence that love of the world, its fervency, its shining, its innocence and hunger to give of itself, I can only imagine it began in love. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. We live in a highly psychologized culture. And by that I mean our thinking about how and why we are the way we are has been really broadly influenced by psychology. And just like astrophysics both speculates and creates educated guesses or models for the Big Bang, psychology is an art as much, if not more, than a science. And while we need it and we can appreciate it, we must not give it more authority to shape the truth or other things. Just like Mary Oliver offers a poetic, even theological imagination for the creation born in love, I want to use theology the same way. I want to theologize about something that matters, like this. When we are weary, we need to rest in God's love and let it and let flow love for ourselves as well as love for those around us. It's how the creation was born, and so it is how we heal. That makes sense, right? I mean, a creation born in love, with creatures the byproduct of that love, well, we must surely need that love to heal. Those images from my darker moments and other brands of hopelessness you might have had could be attributed to depression, grief, anger, and powerlessness, all of which seem right in the face of personal losses and societal and political craziness and environmental degradation and impending catastrophes. But are these chemical imbalances in my brain and our brains due to sociological, psychological, or behavioral dynamics? Perhaps. But that's not exactly how I would frame it, at least theologically. Rather, weariness comes from living our lives embedded in the pretense that we are a self-made creature. Our weariness comes from forgetting that we are a branch on the vine and not an autonomous agent. Weariness comes from imagining there is a scarcity of love, that love is a zero-sum game, and whereby if somebody else gets loved, well, we get less, and therefore we must be better and more worthy of love than our competition. Weariness comes from imagining that the fruit I'm supposed to bear somehow involves or resembles economic power and productivity, whether it's my own production capacity or even how much I give to charity. Weariness comes from presuming the fruit that glorifies God is scarce instead of abundant. You see, if we live with a script about scarcity of love, that we have to search for it, that we have to work really hard for it, that we have to earn it, all the while in danger of losing it, well, that script is exhausting and full of anxiety. Enter Jesus. As always, we have to acknowledge that the author of John's Gospel does weird things to Jesus, even while holding a nub of sacred wisdom up for us to receive. And in this case, John turns this quite beautiful theological imagination into a highly conditional commandment. But I'm going to ignore all that part and suggest that what Jesus offers us here is not a commandment, and certainly not an either-or condition. Rather, what Jesus offers us is a script for living life more abundantly. Now, we don't often think about reality, our personal reality, as living a script. And yet, that's exactly what we do. We have plenty of other scripts that have either been given to us or that we've written for ourselves. And what Jesus is offering us here is a script and invites us to make it our own script. And what my theological imagination leads me to understand is that it's when I'm living out these other scripts to the exclusion of the one that our sacred tradition offers. Well, that's when I get weary. That's when I get anxious and sometimes even cynical. There is the market economic script in which we are agents of a relentless consumerism. There is a tribal script in which ethnicity, race, religion, or politics defines purity and acceptability, even lovability. There is the gender and sexuality script in which our chromosomes and our genes fade us into predictable and prescribed ways of thinking and behaving and loving. There is the autonomous, self-made individual script in which our neighbors and our colleagues are fundamentally our competitors, and we have no one to credit or thank for what we have been or become because we're free agents and we did it all for ourselves. There are hundreds of other scripts, some good, some bad, some even evil. But the point is, we have all been given numerous scripts from day one, and they wear us down. They wound us. They exhaust our hope. But this other script is radically different. Our script is an invitation to abide in God's love. And that should make you laugh. That should make you laugh out loud with joy. Our script tells us, and even gives us a way of acting it out, that the Creator of all that is actually wants its own joy to be in us. To be in us so that our joy may be complete. Imagine that kind of love. We know that kind of love. Actually, that's the love that explodes within us when we want our joy to be in another person, because we just love them so much. We want them to have our joy. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. What my theological imagination tells me is that in those moments, I can no longer see or feel or know in my bones the beauty of the earth and the strange, fearsome magnificence of a cosmos teeming with light and dark and colors and noise. Well, when none of that infuses me with amazement or touches me with joy or straightens my bent shoulders even, or turns my pouting fish lips into a laugh or a smile, well, then I'm acting out those other scripts. And the crazy, nearly insane thing about living out an alien script is that it's our choice. We may have slipped into the wrong script without even knowing it, but once we realize it, well, if we don't change the script, then it's on us. We get to choose. And boy, I would much rather live out a script with the kind of joy and wonder in Mary Oliver's poem than in some conditional dog-eat-dog, there's not enough script that's laying around somewhere in the mental bookshelves of my mind. We get to choose. We get to choose. Well, by the way, that's how theology works. I wish you deep and abiding peace. Thank you so much for being here.